These are the group observations in malls by Daniel Manaligot, Jesus Lemus, and Michael Luna. We're going to go over malls. So the first one I'm going to go over is Jesus's observations in the North Star Mall. Next up are my observations at the shops of La Cantera. And then finally, the Rolling Oaks Mall, which not only Michael observed, but I also observed. So Jesus' observation is up first. His location was on 281 at the North Star Mall around 4 to 6 p.m. Around that time, he observed at three locations: the playground, the food court, and the Foot Locker. At the playground, he saw kids playing around, minding their own business, along with parents just dropping by to take a 10-minute break or so. Most of the kids and parents were focused on smartphones as well as the equipment around on the playground. The parents who were resting had hopping bags around them while they let their kids play. There were other kids who were passing. According to him, there were other kids passing by, but their parents also walked past the playground, which cuts off their joy and excitement and their anticipation and asking whether or not they want to go. In his second observation, Jesus noticed that it was a livelier setting at the food court than the one at the playground. In the food court, there were teens in high school and middle school who were hanging around with their friends. Some were with couples who were kissing up, which the men were kissing up to their girls. He also saw people who looked either unattractive or lame, in which case they were not really considered in the in crowd. Most of the chatter came from the girls, compared to the guys who were yelling most of the time. The groups of guys who were yelling all the time, but they were discussing about sports. Finally, his third observation was at the Foot Locker. In Foot Locker, he saw how people in the store He saw all the people the men in the store buying sneakers for themselves or for their kids. Most of their girlfriends or wives or friends were just tagging along. Apparently, they were just tagging along. Some of the people were speaking Spanish, but most of them were speaking in English. Despite having a Hispanic community around. What really surprised him was the fact that the people who bought hot stuff in who were speaking in Spanish, they were only buying the vague things, the small things like sneaker cleaners or water resistant spray. But they spoke more. But they bought more than anyone else. Any other ethnicity, which is really surprising for him. Next are my high observations at the shops at La Cantera. What's different from North Star Mall and the shops at La Cantera is that the mall from North Star Mall is older, it's indoors, and it's accustomed to, and its shoppers are late teens to early 20s, who are the lively ones, compared to the ones at La Cantera, From the North Star Mall, they catered to the high school and middle school students. At the shops at La Cantera, since they're close by to UTSA, they catered to the older teens and college students. But most of the time, he catered to the rich community, since they have neighborhoods like the Dominion nearby. Right. This was located at West Loop 1604, and the observations were were recorded around 3 to 4 p.m. My first observation was it was the same observation as the playground, like what Jesus did. Only to when I observed the playground, it was a completely different point of view from what Jesus's point of view was. Instead of kids roaming around with tired parents, the playground was under construction. There were a couple of guys who were fixing some of the playground equipment so the kids won't get hurt. They're also trying to expand the playground and renovate it so more kids could come in and play. In my second observation, it was not at a food court. Back then, they did have a food court, but in 2011. But when I went back there, that food court changed to a Forever 21. And instead of having a food court, there were different restaurants at different areas of the mall itself. So instead of going into a food court to observe, I went into a Barnes & Noble and a Louisiano's instead. At a Barnes & Noble at the Starbucks Cafe area, at the periodical stand, there was a young man around my age who had his headphones on, listening to music and sleeping upright at the bench. And while looking for certain magazines to read on and while observing at the same time. My next observation at Barnes & Noble was upstairs when I was reading some comic books at the graphic novel section. Right next to the graphic novel section upstairs was a woman and her kid, which is a woman and her son. The mom has brown hair and her son has brown hair as well, and they were white. Her son was playing with the toy train set, since right next to the graphic novel section there was a Lego toy building area right next to it. And right next to that was the toy trains area, which the son was playing and the mother was looking after upon. My third around that time, after that, I went to into a Luciano's. From there, I had a different observation. Around there, I had in Luciano's while grabbing some lunch. The clerks who were catering to me were both speaking in Spanish before one of them asked me, what do I want to drink or what do I want to order? And then there were two Latino women or Hispanic women who either happens to be good friends or relatives were not only eating lunch, but they were also tending to a baby. Now, finally, in my third observation, was at a finish line. This was earlier before the Luciano's and the Barnes & Noble. At finish line, there weren't a lot of people compared to Jesus's Jesus' observation on Foot Locker, hence this was the observation was held around 3 or 4 in the afternoon when in high school teens and college students are still in school. At that time, a Latino couple was speaking in Spanish to an employee who worked there, who was also fluent in Spanish, while they were trying on a pair of Nike shoes. Two white another observation that I found were two white women. Both both of them were both have blonde hair, and they were around their mid-20s, early 30s. At that time, they were looking around back and forth at the running shoe sections, both at the women's side and at the men's side, to see which design was good. One, wait, not wait. One of them happens to be biting their nails without being noticed without being noticed by me at all. And then finally, there was another guy. There were two other guys, two Hispanic guys, who were looking around for shoes as well, as I was. Only then, one of them unexplainably has their hand on their cheek, either of easing of pain or just thinking. I don't know what it was. Finally, is the Rolling Oaks Mall. There were two observations. There was my high observation, and then there was Michael's observation. On my observation was around 2 and 3 o'clock, around 12 to 2 o'clock. In that observation, there weren't a lot. There weren't as a lot of people as the one on and Lock Ontario or in North Star. Surprisingly, the surprising thing was there was no there wasn't a lot. The reason why there wasn't a lot of people is because people were still in school or people had work, which is normal. I didn't know why I say it was surprising. But anyway, in the food court, there weren't a lot of people around. There were just a few people sitting around, and it's not as lively as the one in North Star or in Luciano's. Most of the people there were quiet compared to the ones in North Star and in Lock Ontario. In North Star, it was very lively. Lock Ontario was in between. Rolling Oaks was the quietest. Yes. In the finish line, I saw there were not a lot of customers around. There were only me, an employee. There was only me who was observing, and 2 or 3 other customers who were also looking around for shoes and sporting gear. Around the mall, it was compared to Michael's observations, there were some kids who were around. Some of them, but these kids were toddlers. Some of them were walking around with their parents. Others were surprisingly leashed, just so they would not run off and get lost from their leashed with the backpacks, just so they won't be running off elsewhere and getting lost by from their parents. Now on to Michael's observations. His observations was around Wednesday at 11:30. And his first observation location was at the food court. or like my observations, compared to my observations, it was it wasn't as lively. Again, was not. There weren't many people here. If you who were sitting, if you were sitting down, but they were, but they weren't. They were talking, but there weren't a lot of people around there. Um, Around the mall, it was pretty quiet. There was a hi. He only saw a guy with his son walking around to get some food. Food. Uh, People are using the elevator and escalator, but since he was at the food court, he saw just few people using an escalator. His second location was at the playground. He did again. His observations uh was around was earlier earlier than mine. Since there weren't a lot of people around, there was barely anyone at the playground. Like it was empty. Um, he could see one on the wait. He could only see like a few people going in and out on the entranceway when he was at the second floor. It was much more quieter than the one in La Cantera and in my high observations at Rolling Oaks Mall. Finally, he went to a finish line. In finish line, when he's checking out, when he was trying on some Nikes, he saw a couple of people, checking it, going in and out and entering. And the salesman, in like any other shoe store, like Foot Locker and like Finish Line, we asked for if he needed help, and he politely said no,